It seems like everybody has a different opinion on everything. However, there is one thing that everybody can agree on, which is people who have driven on I-70 in Colorado at least once hate this road. If you are a Coloradan who loves to ski and hates the traffic getting up there, in this video I will give you my top 5 ways to avoid traffic on I-70. What is happening, everybody? I hope y'all are having a happy Friday. This Friday is a happy Friday because despite it being too late for slushy bumps, you can head over to 7-Eleven and get a free slushie to make up for it. So whilst you're slurping down on that Slurpee, listen carefully for my advice on how to avoid traffic this next winter, as you're going to need it. This is going to be advice given by a local. I have spent the last winter driving up and down the I-70 corridor almost every Saturday as I work full-time, and free weekdays are few and far between for me. So I think I am very qualified to speak on this. As most of you are aware, I-70 is pretty much the only way to get to the ski resorts in Colorado, of course with a couple of exceptions, but those are very few and far between. With that being said, 99.99% of you guys who are skiing in Colorado will have to drive I-70 at some point in your journey. I am sure you are sick and tired of hearing the same old excuses from every other content creator when it comes to their solutions to I-70 traffic. Just go up during the week. Just stay overnight at a hotel. Just go to Eldora. Just go to Crested Butte. Just take the back road. Just take the bus. We have all heard those excuses, so I am not going to even bring those up in this video, with the exception of this, of course. Most of us probably don't have the money to stay in hotels every weekend. Most of us probably work full-time or go to school full-time and don't have the time during the week. Most of us don't want to make the drive to Crested Butte. Also, most of us don't want the monotony of skiing Eldora 20 fucking days a season. I mean, you get the point. For a lot of people, the only viable option to ski is just to go on the weekend and drive I-70. So here are my top 5 tips to avoid traffic on I-70. Starting with tip number 5. Look at the forecast prior to going on your trip. This is probably something you're already doing because you are wanting to see the conditions you are going to be skiing in. But this goes further beyond just that. When I say check the weather forecast, I mean look at it in detail. If there's a storm forecasted during your journey, look at when that storm starts and when it ends and plan your drive accordingly. As not only traffic can worsen because dumb fucks don't know what the chain of vehicle traction laws mean, but also roads are prone to closing as well. You should also check how many inches of snow there's supposed to be, as the more inches there are, the more difficult driving conditions will be. Don't just check the forecast at the ski resort, check the forecast for your hometown and some other places you drive by during your journey. In Colorado, the weather changes very quickly, especially when you're constantly changing elevations. I have been on a handful of trips where conditions have been much worse on Floyd Hill and the Denver Metro than it is west of the Eisenhower and Johnson tunnels. What I typically do is the night before I leave for a ski trip, I will check the hourly forecast and hourly snowfall for the ski resort I plan on going to, the forecast for Floyd Hill, and the forecast in Denver, so I know what to expect throughout the drive. Whether you believe it or not, the weather plays a major role in how insufferable I-70 traffic can get. Moving on to tip number 4. Be flexible. This tip goes hand in hand with the last tip, which was to check the weather prior to going on your trip. Unfortunately, weather forecasts can be notoriously inaccurate, and the weather can end up being way worse than what you may have planned for. Not only that, but nobody has the capability of predicting traffic or road closures, as shit could just pop up out of the blue. Because of all these unpredictable scenarios, it can either take many hours to get home, or you could be completely stranded somewhere. This is where being flexible is very important. Getting a hotel room to stay in can be an expensive option, but is a great option as well. as you don't have to deal with the nightmare drive home, and you could get a second ski day, which who would complain about that? If getting a hotel room is too expensive, consider camping in your vehicle, finding an alternative route, or it could just simply be waiting it out by going to the pub for a few hours at the ski town. I know it sucks having to be delayed getting home, but try to make the best of a bad situation. You never know, the worst day getting home could turn into the best day if you play it smart and be flexible. Over a year ago, I took a trip to Aspen for a couple of days in the middle of April. On my drive back, I went to grab a bite at Glenwood Springs, and when I checked the GPS before leaving, traffic was at a complete standstill. Instead of waiting in that, I took the opportunity to go visit the hot springs, and I hung out there until the traffic started moving again. That is a solid example of being flexible. Being flexible is a key way to make your trip enjoyable, as when you have room to change plans, it significantly reduces your stress and anxiety. Moving on to tip number 3, using navigation apps. Navigation apps can be a great tool for deciding when to leave and what route to take, and may even take you on some hidden secret routes that will help you bypass a chunk of traffic. It is also important to consider what type of navigation apps to use, as well as the navigation app's shortcomings. Waze, W-A-Z-E, is a popular navigation app that is used to take you the most efficient route, warn you of potential obstacles and hazards on the road, and it even warns you if there are any cops on your route so you can avoid getting a speeding ticket. Google Maps and Apple Maps are also good tools as well, but are slightly less reliable than Waze. My problem with Waze is sometimes it will get the address wrong when I put it in, so be careful about that one if you choose to use Waze. I always check the navigation apps typically before I leave the ski resort, because that is when I usually run into traffic, which is on the drive home. One thing I typically don't trust on the navigation apps is the ETA, especially when traffic is a factor, as Google Maps always gets it wrong. Sometimes, some of the routes Google Maps puts me on aren't necessarily the most efficient, so I will sometimes ignore the navigation and go my own way, as I am pretty familiar with the traffic patterns on I-70. Sometimes it pays off and sometimes it doesn't. Either way, navigation apps are a useful tool, but use them cautiously. Now moving on to tip number 2, which is go on Saturdays rather than Sundays. When it comes to choosing which day you go up, you pretty much have to pick your poison. Do you not mind longer lines at the resort, or do you not mind a longer drive home? If you're an entitled snob and don't want to deal with either, I'm afraid you're on your own with this one. If you're like me, where you're someone who hates traffic but can tolerate longer lift lines, then Saturday is the better day to go. If you're someone who can't stand long lift lines but can tolerate more traffic, then Sunday is probably the better day to go. Saturdays you'll run into worse morning traffic than on Sundays, but getting home will be a breeze compared to Sundays. I don't find this to be a big deal, as I just leave earlier on Saturday mornings and I usually don't run into problems getting up. If you do choose to go Sundays, just be aware on the way home the traffic leading up to the Johnson Tunnel can be up to a 2-hour wait, and that doesn't even include the traffic after the tunnel. Yes, it does get that fucking bad, especially if there's a big storm and all the alternative routes are closed. Saturdays are not immune to bad traffic either, but it is way less common to have those types of delays on Saturdays, as it is only day trippers returning home. On Sundays, you not only have the day trippers returning home, but you also have the people with multi-day ski trips returning home for the end of the weekend. Saturdays are also better to go, as it allows you to have a buffer day between your ski day and when you have to return to work the following Monday. This is a great thing because if you end up getting stranded, then you have an extra day to get home without having to miss work. And finally, we are going to discuss my number 1 tip, which is time your departure strategically. This is going to be the more informative part of the video, as I am about to give you a bunch of times you would typically want to leave to avoid traffic. Before I get to the times, I want to establish two different landmarks I am going to reference a lot, so I recommend you pull up your navigation app or Google Maps website and locate these locations. The first location I am going to reference is the interchange between Colorado State Highway 470 and I-70. The second location I'm going to reference is the I-70 off-ramp to US 6 in Silverthorne. Let's start with leaving in the morning. If you choose to go on Saturdays, you typically want to leave a little earlier than on Sundays, as the morning traffic is a little worse on Saturdays. If you leave on Saturday morning, I recommend you are at the C470 interchange by 6 a.m. on a non-holiday weekend and the roads are clear. If the roads are snowy/icy or it is a holiday weekend, then you should be at the interchange by 5:30 a.m., maybe 5:15 a.m. if it is very bad. Make sure you check your weather and navigation apps before leaving, as that will give you the best information on what to expect. If you go on Sunday, the same times apply, except just add 1 hour to the Saturday times. For example, if it is a non-holiday dry road Sunday, the Saturday time would be 6 a.m., so on Sunday you can get away with 7 a.m. Keep in mind, these times mostly apply to the peak ski season, which runs from New Year's to mid-March. In the early and late season, you can get away with leaving later without running into problems. Now when it comes to getting home, we discussed earlier that Sundays you are going to run into significantly worse traffic. On a normal Sunday, a good time to be at the Silverthorne off-ramp is at 2:30 p.m. If it is a peak day or the road conditions are bad, then I would recommend being there around 2 p.m. and maybe 1:30 p.m. on the very bad days. For Saturdays, I would suggest 3:30 p.m. for a normal Saturday, 3 o'clock p.m. for the more busy Saturdays, and 2:30 p.m. for the very insane Saturdays. If it is a very slow Saturday, which they do happen, you can get away with leaving at any time you want. Keep in mind, going home, it is much easier to predict how bad the traffic will be, as you will have seen how busy the ski resort is and how much traffic there was when you drove up. You also will have known what the weather was like too. So when you're skiing on the mountain, make sure you pay attention to all those factors so you can decide when the appropriate time to leave is. Now, if you don't mind waiting it out and want to get a full ski day in, you typically won't run into problems if you get to Silverthorne at 6:30 p.m. or later. On a crazier day, I would do 8 p.m. or later. Now on Sundays, waiting it out is a lot more risky. If it is one of the slower Sundays, I would do 7:30 p.m. But if it is not a slow Sunday, I wouldn't recommend waiting it out at all. Trust me, I tried waiting it out with my family on a Sunday night after a powder day, and the traffic would not go away. There was endless traffic past midnight. After almost 20 years of doing day trips on I-70, these are the times that have worked best for me and have given me the least problems. Skiing is in high demand in 2025, and we all have to find a way to get along. Following all 5 of these tips together will ensure you have a great ski day, regardless of the decisions everyone else on the mountain or on the road make. I hope this advice was helpful. If not, then that means you have already been doing these things. Great minds think alike, am I right? Thank you all for watching. Let me know in the comments the best advice, or if there is anything I missed, and I will see you all next time. Peace out.